QSO Today, episode 418, Otis Vicens NP4G. This episode of QSO Today is sponsored by ICOM America, makers of the finest amateur radios and accessories for your ham radio station, and by Nuts and Bolts Magazine. Just a reminder that we have a leaderboard that updates in real time on our show notes page, recognizing the generous support that we get from listeners. Our sponsors and listeners make it possible to bring you QSO Today every week. I appreciate it. Welcome to the QSO Today podcast. I'm Eric Guth, amateur call sign 4Z1UG, where I demonstrate the diversity and relevance of the amateur radio hobby and its impact on society by interviewing ham radio operators, many of whom played vital roles in shaping our technology through the amateur radio hobby. And while many people might say, ham radio, do people still do that? This podcast demonstrates through in-depth interviews just how amazing, diverse, and dynamic the amateur radio hobby continues to be. The QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo last weekend was a success according to the mostly positive messages that I'm getting from sponsors and participants. And while the crowd was not as large as previous expos, our technology was mostly tight, the presentations were out of this world, and we enjoyed each other's company in our Kumo Space lounges. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope that it will be positive and a net gain for ham radio. And by the way, the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo is still in on-demand mode until October 16th. So if you haven't been to look at the presentations, you can still go now. Otis Vicens NP4G grew up in Puerto Rico with an appreciation for radio, a love of learning, and a career in orthodontics. NP4G has enjoyed ham radio from his teenage years and now is one of the crew members headed to Bouvet Island on the 3Y0J DXpedition assault on the island in January 2023. Otis joins me to tell his ham radio story and his preparations for Bouvet. NP4G, this is Eric, 4Z1UG. Are you there, Otis?
Yes, I'm here, Eric. Thank you very much.
Otis, thanks for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. Can we start at the beginning of your ham radio story? When and how did it start for you?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here with you, hanging out for a little while. I started ham radio when I was 16. Back at home, I started with CB radios and playing with that for a little while. And then one day I was talking to a gentleman there, and he said, that he was a KP4, and I was like, KP4, what's that? And then he said, well, it's ham radio. He started to tell me about it. And then he said, it's very easy. All you have to do is you go to Radio Shack, buy the book, and then call this guy up, and he'll tell you about the exam. So I got the book. I went to study it, and then my dad drove me over to the University of Puerto Rico in San Juan, where they were doing the testing.
Your hometown is what?
It's Humacao. I'm on the southeast of the island, roughly about 45 minutes, right on the water.
Just for setting the scene, how many families live in Humacao?
30,000 people, maybe 40,000.
So it's a reasonable-sized town.
Yes.
And it has a Radio Shack.
Yeah, we had a Walmart, so that's a good reference. Yeah, we didn't have a Walmart back then, but we had a Radio Shack. We actually had two of them.
So you kind of discovered ham radio at age 16. And you touched on CB radio. Did you have an interest in radio and electronics even earlier? I mean, was this just something that you suddenly discovered, or is it something that kind of grew out of an interest in electronics and communications?
Yes, no, more likely communications. I had a band. I used to play drums, so we went to a practice that my buddies and got a handy talkie, and I'm like, what's that? I said, oh, you turn it on, you talk to people. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then that's how I got started. And then the move over to ham radio. I remember my initial call sign was November Papa 3 Juliet Golf back in January of 97. And I've been hooked up ever since. After that, I graduated high school, and then I went to Purdue University. And, ham radio, and there's a club there. It's Whiskey Yankee Bravo. And I went up there and said, hello, I'm such and such. I like to do radio, and here we are. And they hooked me up. The first time I tried HF radio was up there And it was, very involving, and there were a nice group of folks, of people there. And so I was there for 2 years. And then after that, I came back home to San Juan to the dental school here. So no radio for 4 years, pretty much. I unfortunately missed the peak of I think it was cycle 23 back in 2000. And so I missed that one because I was studying. But after that, I went to New York for my training, specialty training. I did pediatric dentistry first in Brooklyn, New York. And then the 3 years that I spent after that at Stony Brook University in Long Island, I said, I'm hooked to this stuff. So that was pretty much the first time I got a chance to go to Dayton frequently and started, seeing what's out there.
You got your first license at age 16, and your hometown is Humacao, Puerto Rico, which Puerto Rico is a possession of the United States of America, not a state. But the licensing is done by the FCC.
Yes, correct.
Did Humacao, a town of 30,000 people, did it have an amateur radio club?
Not really. There were some hams here that were scattered around. I did have a good friend, and this is a good story, actually. There was an older gentleman. He was a doctor here in town. He was very good friends with my dad. And they always meet at the post office, 11 a.m. when the mail comes out. And then he would always show my dad, hey, I got this QSL card and so. And then one day my dad says, well, listen, I think my son got a ham radio license too. And he said, what do you mean? Yeah, this is call signing. It's like, well, listen, tell Otis, just show up to my house, knock on the door, and identify himself. So it was cool. One day, I'm back here from college, and I'm bored, summer or whatever. And I said, hey, Dad, you remember that guy? Please take me to his house. And okay. So I go up there. It was, a few minutes away from our home. I literally did exactly the same thing. I knocked on the door, and he said, hello. And I'm Dr. Jonah. This is Otis Vicens. My dad told me to come here and knock your door. And I was like, great. How'd you get here? My dad drove me. Tell your dad to go home. I'll drive you back. Okay, no problem. So we go into the little shack. This guy his call sign was KP4 Alpha Zulu. And he started showing me the QSL cards, the King Hussein card and the Japan, and talking 10 meters at midnight from, 10 meters being open 24 hours a day back in those sun cycles. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. And then he even said, do you have an HF radio? And I said, no, I'm only doing 2 meters now. Oh, no, that's not right. And we walked to his garage, and he had this FT, I think it was like a 101 from Yaesu, like really old stuff. And okay, here's your radio. And then he said, do you have an antenna? I'm like, no, I only have 2 meters. I said, okay. So we drove over, we came down, and then we're like looking at the house, and we're like, well, you see that tree there next to your house? I think we could put a 50-meter dipole in here. So he gave me the instructions, gave me the balloon, and I made the antenna, put it up, and started doing HF when I was like 16, thanks to this guy. He later on passed away a couple years later. He had some health problems, but it's dearly to my heart. Whenever I tell local people that story, they always say, oh, Tonio was, that was him. That's how generous he was. So it's pretty cool.
Would you say he was a mentor of yours?
Yeah, just for like that day.
Just for that day. Interesting. So he gives you your first HF rig. He tells you to hang a 15-meter dipole from the tree.
Yep.
Well, you know what? Sometimes that's what it takes for somebody to come into your life and get you going and then disappear.
Yeah. No, and then after that, I went back to the States for school. And then I would come here during breaks, and we probably see each other maybe for like a coffee or something. And that was it. But by the time I actually finished, graduated, and came home, permanently, he already passed away. So,
were you in high school abroad?
No, high school I did here in Puerto Rico at home, my hometown.
You get your amateur radio license at age 16. There wasn't a lot of activity except somehow you had a 2-meter handheld. Did you get that from Radio Shack?
No, I think my mom got it from AES on a trip to Orlando.
You finished high school at what age?
16.
Ah, okay. Most American kids finish high school at 18.
Oh, no, but because the problem was I'm very, very hyper in school, and when I was a baby, so my mom put me in school early, so I was a year ahead of everybody.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so you finish high school at 16, and then you go away to Purdue?
Yes.
What did you study at Purdue?
I knew I wanted to be a dentist, so I went and did biology over there. And I just went over, did my prerequisites for dental school, and I was only there for 2 years. I didn't finish my undergraduate degree. Then I applied to dental school in Puerto Rico, and they accepted me, and I came back home for the next 4 years.
It wasn't a requirement to have a BA to go to dental school in Puerto Rico?
Back then, as long as you had prerequisites and you completed, whatever number of credits required, it was fine. And I did my interview, I did the whole thing, and I got into dental school. I was 18 by then. So I was the youngest in the dental school for like 3 years. I graduated as a dentist at age 22, which is like that's at the age pretty much everybody's starting dental school. And thanks to my mom, for putting me in school that early, I guess.
Now, did you do a stint as a dentist before you decided to go into orthodontics?
Yes, well, my mom's a pediatric dentist, so with her, I knew what teeth were about. We also used to hang out at the office every once in a while, and then, going to dental school. And after that, I wanted to do pediatric dentistry. And so when I was there, I had a professor. His name is Stan Alexander, and he was the program director at Stony Brook. He would come on like Tuesdays, 1 day a week, to teach us about orthodontics. And I really liked, the whole topic, the whole atmosphere. I liked him a lot. And I told him, Dr. Alexander, I'd like to continue my training and, like to continue under you. And he said, well, okay, apply, make sure you apply a couple places. And then, I applied, did the whole process, interviews, stuff like that. And he graciously accepted me and changed my life forever. So he believed in me and he gave me the opportunity. So, forever thankful for him. And funny thing is, he was born exactly the same day as my mother, except that he was born in Brooklyn and my mom was born in San Juan. But it's exactly the same day, the same year. So I say that he's he could be my father.
So your mother's a pediatric dentist, and that's how you got interested in dentistry.
Yes.
That's a pretty amazing story. So then you study orthodontics. Did you study orthodontics in San Juan, or did you go to Stony Brook?
Stony Brook for that. So after the 2 years of pediatric, I went 3 years at Stony Brook University. That's in the middle of Long Island, pretty much on the North Shore. And I did my 3 years there, and I knew I wanted to come home. So once I finished up, graduated and all that, I moved home and then started my practice inside my mom's office for about a couple of years. And then after that, I started growing and getting my own place and growing it, basically. But it's been, and also another reason why I wanted to come back to PR was I already had the DX bug on me. So I wanted to, come back home. That's about a year before I moved home. That's when I changed my call to my current call sign, NP4G. And I came home, I, put 40-meter wire up there and started doing calling CQ, basically. And getting better at CW and just learning and studying and enjoying ham radio pretty much.
Are you in San Juan now?
My hometown of Humacao.
So you moved back to your hometown.
Yeah, we joke about that I treat my friends' kids now in my clinic. So that's pretty cool seeing, people you haven't seen in like 20 years, all of a sudden they show up with kids that look exactly like them. And I feel like it's a blessing because I know a lot of people like that moved out of the hometown because of work, because of life, things like that. But thanks to my profession, I'm one of the lucky ones that can practice and live, essentially wherever I want.
There's nothing better than being like in a small town, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows you. I mean, maybe there's a downside to that if everybody knows you also.
You have to behave, so.
Yeah, that's right. I live in a small town as well, and I've never lived in small towns. I live in a small town now for 22 years, and I know everybody.
Yep.
Most people know me. You can't jaywalk.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to make sure you park on the right spots. You don't, run the red lights.
Because people say, oh, there's Eric parking between the parking spaces again, so I don't do it. Well, that's very interesting. You've settled back in Humacao. You have set up a station. What is the station that you've got now? What's the current rig?
The current rig is a Flex 6600, and we actually have it remote operated. So let me go back a little bit. When I moved home, so I had my little radio, was like a 897 with a wire and all that. And then I wanted to build something bigger. So there was a problem here where I was living. I had to move, but the house that I was moving to had some restrictions in terms of like HOAs and stuff like that. So my mom said, "Hey, listen, why don't you put your antennas back at home where you had them when you were a kid?" Okay, so I did that, and I always tell my mom that she saved my marriage. So I put that up there, and I would initially, like, if I wanted to do radio, I have to go to my mom's office, go to the room, turn it on, play with it. But then it's been evolving, and remoting has been a blessing. Essentially, we started out with the remote rigs and the Kenwoods, the 4800, I think it was. So we did that for a while. But then right now we have the station is fully automated. It's at KP3H, a good friend of mine. Because what happened was, after right before the hurricane in 2017, my mom, she said that she was going to sell the house. And I needed to find somewhere else to put my stuff. And then a good friend of mine, Daniel, KP3H, after the storm, he had the antenna, but he had to sell all his radios, and half the antennas were broken after the storm. So I'm sitting down with him, and it's like, Daniel, why don't we just join together? I have the radios, I don't have an antenna. You have the antenna, you don't have the radios. Let's work together. So we did, and then and he's always helping with antennas and stuff for years. So we set it up at his house. I brought my equipment over, and we used to do Elecraft radios for a little while. And then after that, we switched to Flex. And actually, the station is a part of the Remote Ham Radio Network as well. So it's available. Flex, and also the Power Genius amplifier. It's a stepper antenna. Then we have that goes 6 to 40. And then we have wires 480 and 160. So we can pretty much do every band. Yeah, pretty much except for. No, yeah, I think so.
And now this message from ICOM America. Heard it, worked it, logged it. This summer, keep your competitive contesting edge with ICOM. Our high-powered base stations cut through pile-ups, letting you work the bands and log those contacts. Contest from the comfort of your home or remotely with the RSBA1 app. The ICOM IC7851 gives you a new window into the RF world, and its on-air excellence is unparalleled. With faster processors, high input gain, high display resolution, and a cleaner signal, it's truly the pinnacle of HF perfection. Features include dual receivers, digital IF filters, memory keyer, digital voice recorder, high-resolution spectrum waterfall display, enhanced PC connectivity, and an SD memory card slot. The ICOM IC7610 is the SDR every ham wants. This high-performance SDR can pick out faint signals in the presence of stronger adjacent signals. The ICOM IC7610 is a direct sampling software-defined radio that has changed the world's definition of an SDR transceiver. Its features include RF direct sampling system, 110 dB RMDR, independent dual receiver, and dual digicell. Create your own band openings with the ICOM IC9700. This transceiver brings direct sampling to the UHF-VHF weak signal world. This all-mode transceiver is loaded with innovative features that are sure to keep you busy that include faster processors, higher input gain, higher display resolution, and a cleaner signal. This has become the new de facto standard as a baseband rig for microwave operation as well. Features include 4.3-inch touchscreen color TFT LCD, real-time high-speed spectrum scope and waterfall display, smooth satellite operation with 99 satellite channels, dual watch operation, and full duplex operation in satellite mode. The ICOM IC7300 is a high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design that will far exceed expectations. This innovative HF transceiver digitizes RF before various receiver stages, reducing inherent noise in different IF stages. The IC7300 changed the way entry-level HF is designed. It is the go-to rig in my station now, and I love it. Features include RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and an SD memory card slot. Just know that you'll be very pleased with one of these fine rigs to enhance your contest, DX, and general ham radio operation in your station. Be sure to check out these ICOM rigs and their full line of base stations and portable radios at an amateur radio dealer near you. And when you make that purchase of a fine ICOM rig, be sure to tell your dealer that you heard about it here on the QSO Today podcast. And now back to our QSO Today. So why do you think, I'm just curious, because I hear this a lot. I see it in the way that it's written, and I see it in some of the magazines. You said that moving the radio away from the house saved your marriage.
Yes.
What's the objection that a spouse has to amateur radio in the house?
Yeah, well, the problem was because there was HOA restrictions to begin with. So I knew I could probably put like a little on, Jaggy or something, and then maybe I could, get by. But she wasn't really, she's like, okay, radio's important. And I always tell her, hey, listen, radio came 6 months before you came to my life. So, yeah, very dearly in my heart, it was there before you got here. And I've been married for almost 20 years now. So she knows it's very important. And, but she tolerates it, I guess. She's not a fan of it. I mean, I don't think she'll ever get a radio ticket.
I guess the question I'm asking, Otis, is that I'm wondering if the objection is the way it looks, the ham radio antenna outside the way it looks, or is it the competition for time? Meaning that, my husband, he's in his radio shack and he's not with me. I'm always wondering what the objection that spouses have to ham radio. Oftentimes, it sounds to me like the objection to ham radio is the antennas outside more than the competition for time. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think it's that. But when back then, let's say I would have to do a contest, I can't do contesting from home because the kids are around, the wife's around. So I always try to go somewhere. And so you're concentrated, there for just to do your radio thing. Occasionally at home, I might have it on and remote in. And also I can remote in from my office, from my cell phone, from everywhere pretty much, as long as I have an internet connection. So it's not like competes with her, I guess.
At least not while you're around her.
Exactly, yeah. If I'm by myself at home, the radio will probably be on. And when she comes in, I'll probably shut it off and, have dinner or something, yeah.
What do the kids think of it?
They like it. I don't think they'll be hams. I mean, the kid likes to do online gaming and stuff like that, the girl as well. But when she was little, she would literally hold the mic and say, CQ contest when she was 3. So that's as close as I got her to the radio stuff. They encourage it. They tell me, hey, go for it. It's your passion. Enjoy it. Go for it. But I don't think they'll ever. Maybe, I don't know. I had a good friend of mine. His son got his ham radio ticket when his son was 30-something. So I'm not going to lose hope. It might happen.
We say on this podcast quite a lot that perhaps the new kids on the block in ham radio are the 35-year-olds.
Yeah.
Things are settling down enough that they can actually focus on a hobby. Let's go back a little bit to the hurricane. What was the hurricane? What was the name of the hurricane and when was it?
Yes, that was actually September 17th of the 2017. We had a Hurricane Maria. That was a Category 4-5 storm. Probably the biggest storm we've had in about 80 years. So that was really a disaster here.
How did it affect Humacao?
It landed in Humacao. It came through Dominica, and then it started going up north. It crossed a little bit over St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And then they always usually come in through the southeast coast. So the Humacao was right there. So it went right through there. And then it came out on the northwest. We had, we had to get ready for it. It's a cool story because I was in Colombia for a orthodontic meeting. And then we're watching the weather and all that, so I'm getting anxious. And my wife, she left Colombia the day before because she was going with my mom to Las Vegas for a getaway to see the Ricky Martin show. My mom had been doing a fundraising for his foundation, and that was the award. So, my wife is a fan, so of course she's not going to take my dad. She took her. So she goes to Vegas and okay, so we know the storm's coming. So she flies Sunday, gets to Puerto Rico. Sunday morning, she takes care of stuff. And then she leaves Monday afternoon. And the storm came on Tuesday night. So I joke that, part of the event was a meet and greet with Ricky Martin. So, of course, they're hanging out. And then it's late at night, probably 10, and the winds are picking up, and I get a last picture of her on my cell phone. It's my wife with another man. And then after that, power's out, cell phone's out, and that's it. So I went to my in-laws with the kids. We, sheltered for a little while, and then the next day I got out maybe around noontime, maybe. So storm was already, some winds, but not. You could get out by then to assess the damage. And I remember I had my KX2 radio with a little portable antenna. I set that up 40 meters. I called on one frequency, and Juliet 35 X-ray. Derek in Grenada picks up my signal, and we kind of practiced 2 weeks before because we had another hurricane came close by. So Derek calls her up on her phone and says, "Hey, I'm radio guy, whatever. I got Otis on the line," and he says it's okay. Okay, and when you say you're okay back then, it means you're alive because she was watching the news on CNN, Weather Channel, all that stuff from there. And you had that. You had the earthquakes in Mexico as well running at the same time. So it was kind of shocked. And she saw some videos of our neighborhood that being transmitted, but I didn't get to see that. And she was really scared. So with ham radio, I was able to contact her. And I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it might have been one of the first signals that came out. So we started, assessing the damage.
What kind of devastation did Humacao suffer? We
had the mountains look like a fire broke because all the trees look burned from all the friction and all the wind. Not much flooding in the part where I live. Some of the areas got flooded out, but it was bad.
What do they make houses out of in Humacao, and do houses blow away? And how do you batten down the hatches? I mean, where do you go when you've got a hurricane landing in your town?
Yeah, it's all concrete. I mean, everything here, it's built to that. There's some wooden houses and stuff. Some houses are concrete, but wooden roofs, so the roofs will go away. We always say try to go to the closest center away from the windows. So we were basically, inside the house. We had window shutters all throughout the house and my in-laws. And, the last resort will be everybody goes to the inside bathroom and just wait it out.
So you have a concrete house. Are the inside walls also concrete?
Yeah, everything's concrete. So we didn't maybe you'll get some rain coming through the windows, very little water. That's it. But outside, it was a whole different story. And you could hear like the wind blowing and pulling your window out and your door. So they'll be like, shaking the whole time. I mean, it was like 150 miles an hour winds. The wind gust probably like 170. I forgot what it was. But it was total devastation. We had, I think it was like 98% of the cell phone towers were out. We had gas shortages for, by the time I think it was about 10 days once they finally got it to get working as it was before. So it was quite challenging. We started counting days instead of like Monday, Tuesdays. We started counting, day 1, day 2, day 3, and so forth. I didn't work for I think it was about 3 weeks.
Were you involved in the rescue effort?
Yeah, well, originally, we had some communications like that. And then what I would do is, look around my neighborhood, drive around and just, hey, listen, tell my friends, I got radio. I can send messages to your relatives in the States. So I had a generator. So I would turn on my 100 watts, radio at 8 o'clock at night every day. And then I call CQ. Somebody comes up and I say, hey, hi, can you help me out? Sure. And I started passing messages out. And I had a good story. My good friend of mine, K1TG, Doug Grant, he's out of Maine, very well-known contester. He has a big station. So when he called in, I was very happy. I was 100 watts, but I had no idea where I was going to get my diesel. So if I ran out of diesel, I have to go to 5 watts, and he'll still be able to pick me up. So he calls my wife, and my wife actually has a cell phone number saved on her cell phone as ham radio guy from Maine. And the two have never met before. Hopefully it'll happen at some point. Going at 8 o'clock at night, and he said, okay, Otis, you're ready. Your wife's flight got canceled. She got bumped to 2 days. She's saying this. And okay, so, and I gave her the message. He would text her. And then after that, okay, let me start, going through my notebook here. Okay, so he started. So it's kind of like a contesting practice. I mean, we practice contests. You're able to pass information at a very good rate. And with him, it felt like that. It's giving him, this number, copy down, 327, whatever. And then Maria, call her up, tell her Johnny's okay.
Don't you think that the reason that we do contests and DXing is to be prepared for this kind of an emergency?
Absolutely.
You're training all the time in a contest, but when it comes to a real emergency, this is where all these skills kick in.
No, yes. And I remember whenever I would pass traffic through a contester guy, it would be 3 or 4 times as much as a regular ham radio guy.
They're efficient. They know how to move the traffic.
The numbers on on my first call, and it was fast. I mean, and we could I only turned on my radio for, I don't know, half hour maybe. I had to turn it off after that. I get my messages in, and then they'll follow up next day, and then whatever, messages coming in, incoming, then I would get them that way. So it worked pretty well, and the antennas were there. I mean, if Doug wasn't a contester and I ran on diesel and I had to go to 5 watts, I don't think he'll hear me. But thank God he had enough, antenna power to be able to pick up my weak signal if I had to go down to 5 watts. So that was very comforting to have him on the air, I'll tell you that.
So do you think ham radio saved the day in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, that was like my part, because after that, what happened was, there was no communication. So there were some volunteers with the Red Cross, and some radio guys from the mainland came down, and they were able to put communications. And one thing, because the Red Cross, we're starting being prepared, and we had a little practice 2 weeks before that with the other hurricane, that the Red Cross was the only people that had radio guys all scattered throughout the island. So even the federal, organizations, the government, they used Red Cross's ham radio volunteers to be able to get their information out. So I remember one of my duties was I would show up at a local hospital. They had sent like emergency tent, like an emergency room. Temporary, and I went there. I showed up. I said, "Hey, I'm radio guy. Do you need to send any messages?" And I support them for couple days till they were able to get their satellite communications and stuff going. And some of the messages were like, "Hey, tell FEMA that we need diesel. We're running out." Okay, so we got that message across. Next day when I show up, oh yeah, the diesel tank came over and they delivered. Okay, thank you very much. And I kept doing that for probably about 2 weeks. Because after my wife came home, 2 weeks of that, and then I had to start prepping for me to go back to work. So the emergency by then San Juan was looking much better. Cell phone towers were up. If I had to get cell phone, I would have to drive to San Juan. Basically, you remember seeing a lot of people like parking on the highways and just being out there. And then we came back here. So I got power at home on December. So that's about 3 months.
How do you live without power for 3 months? Do you have a backup generator?
Backup generator.
Fuel?
Yeah, by then it was fine. I mean, I had to get fuel. Once a week, we would get like one of these 55-gallon drums, put on the back of the truck, drive down to the gas station, load it up, and then load it up locally here, and then ration it. So at the beginning, I would like wake, turn it on at 8 p.m., 3 in the morning, turn it off. And then you sleep off with that. And then after that, I was able to turn it on maybe about 12 hours a day. And then and the same thing in my clinic. I mean, I would come here every morning, fill up, 10 gallons of diesel, load up the generator, crank it up, work the day, 5 hours, 6, whatever you could do. And then next day repeat. And we kept doing that. In my office, I got power back in like February. So it was like 5 months without power. So it was kind of rough, but hey, you learn to cope with things and your body adapts. I mean, it's amazing how things work. When, it gets dark, 6 p.m., you're dead tired.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Sun comes up and you're like energetic. I only had like little breakfast and then 1 meal a day. I didn't feel hungry. I mean, your body adapts to it and it just gets used to the day 1, day 2, day 3 kind of sequence.
Right, but you're getting something like 10, 11 hours of sleep every night.
Yeah, so it's better sleep than nowadays with power.
I feel that right now. I feel getting ready for the expo that my sleep, I'm up late, I'm up early. I think I'll sleep a month afterwards. But I've heard this, people that go to live with the Amish for a while, and the Amish don't use electricity at night. So you go to sleep when the sun goes down, you get up when the sun rises, or maybe just before the sun rises, and you have this kind of natural rhythm, and you actually feel pretty terrific.
Yeah, no, and we felt fine, and the thing, I'd say the first 2 weeks were probably the roughest ones, but back then, you had to save your resources. So 1 meal a day, but that was good meal. We had our rice and beans and maybe some chicken, some other stuff, canned stuff, of course. You couldn't, the supermarkets were pretty much empty. And then, but you had that meal and then maybe a little cracker at night, that's it. You don't really need that much food after that. And then water, we had some, water was out for like a week or so. But they had some water. Some people in the community, they went to the mountain and they did like spring water straight from the mountain. So they put the hoses down to tanks. So people would just go there, fill up your tank, your little jug or something, and then go back home and use that water. So it was quite a learning experience. It's very humbling to be able to tell that, and the way we lived. I mean, that was it. So like I was telling you, we there's a potential storm coming on Saturday. So we're kind of like, stress disorder, I guess.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Whenever there's like a warning, we're like hooked, and like people are like, oh no, we don't want to go through Maria again. So we're more prepared now. And also the good thing that we learned is, communications failed badly. So right after, they buried a lot of fiber optic here. So when the next big one comes in 80 years, whenever that is, we should be in a much better shape because we'll have more infrastructure that way. So, and now I think every house they build here includes a generator. So that's something that's required just as your phone or your water or your regular.
I want to take a minute to tell you about my favorite podcast, the Ham Radio Workbench Podcast, with George, KJ6VU, and now joined by Rod, VA3ON, Mike, VA3MW, Mark, N6MTS, and Vince, VE6LK. Every 2 weeks, George and company offer up a status report on the many amateur radio projects on their workbenches and explore projects on their guests' workbenches. This group is project active and prolific, covering many technical areas of amateur radio. So the next time you want a deep dive into ham radio electronic project building, or to learn about technology, tools, test equipment, construction techniques, and the rest, listen to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast, available on every podcast player and channel. Use the link in this week's show notes page to get to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast directly. And now back to my QSO. What do you think the biggest takeaway from Hurricane Maria was for you?
I think it's endurance and preparedness. You really can't prepare for something because we've been through, I remember going through hurricanes, but hey, 2 weeks after that, power's back and you go back to work. But this one was a monster. And I think after that, it's just endurance and determination. I mean, just keep going. Things will get better. It's just a matter of time and just patience, and that's it. And of course, radio thing just helped the day, I tell you, with being able to communicate with my wife when she was away and being able to help out the community and help out, people outside. So it was pretty amazing. But it was well worth it, I tell you. So I'll tell you, after that, so my wife comes home, life is back to normal, and she says, oh, you know what, this ham radio thing, it's really helpful. And I'm like, yeah, finally. So I buy the little, the technician book, and I put it next to her bed table right there. And it goes a week, and it's still there, 2 months, and it's all dusty now. I'm like, okay, honey, it's not going to happen. So I took it back and gave it to a friend. So that's as close as I got it.
Maybe she'd like something like Ham Test Online or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
It's kind of faster.
Yep. But I got to wait for another hurricane to try that trick.
That seems like that's pretty hard. That's an amazing story, and I actually hadn't talked to anybody that actually had been through the hurricane. Obviously, in Israel, we have our moments here as well, and we always learn lessons from these moments. And I think Hurricane Maria is a huge, maybe once-in-a-lifetime lesson, and I'm glad that you shared it. Let me ask you something. The reason that we know each other and the reason that we're talking is that you're part of the 3Y0J Bouvet Island 2023 team who's going to make an assault on probably, I described it to you at the beginning, probably one of the worst places on the planet to try to go operate ham radio. And certainly a number of teams have tried this recently in recent years with no success. Was there one that had one success? But how did you get involved in 3Y0J?
Well, I'll tell you, I get this is back in late December of last year. So I get this Facebook message from Kenneth, LA7GIA, he's the team leader. And it was kind of weird because when you send text, you just go straight to the point. Hey, listen, do this. And he was like, hey, Otis, how you doing? How's the family? And I'm like, you don't really get those texts. And so he's like smoothing the way for popping the question. And he said, hey, Otis, how'd you like to go to Bouvet? And as he said, is this much, 2 months out of your life or whatever? And I'm like, okay. And I remember when he announced before that I even, support him and I told him, hey, put me on your wait list or whatever. I didn't really think that he would end up calling me, but he did. So I immediately called him on the phone. We spent an hour and I'm like, okay, Kenneth, let's go slow. Tell me step 1, step 2. And he tells me about the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to be honest with you, Kenneth. I think your call comes in at the perfect time because, I'm young enough that I'm healthy and I could do that. I'm old enough that, my life is okay. My office is well. My work is stable. So it's perfect timing. And I said, give me about 3 days. So I go up to the wife and I just lay it out there. She's like, are you freaking crazy? And okay, so forget about that. So, it starts working in my mind. And like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I gotta be honest, I read a book, which was really cool. It's called How to Die with Zero. And it's this guy, I forgot the author now, but it says, why, let's say, you die and you had left $1 million in your bank account. That's $1 million worth of your life that you just wasted, where you should have tried to die with zero, essentially. So he brings a lot of examples. And in one of the stories, he said when the guy turned like 45, he did a big party with in St. Bart's. He invited all his friends from all his life. It was like 40 people. He paid for everybody's ticket for a week there. And it was the memories that you get. So for me, it was like, well, I'm only going to get this to go to Bouvet once. I always want to do the expeditioning, stuff like that. Yes, this is the hardest one. So I go up to my kids and I tell, hey, guys, they just invited me to go to Antarctica. They're like, well, that's really cool. You should go. Okay, great. So 2 days after that, I go to the wife again. And this time, I did it right. We had dinner, I had a little glass of wine. And I said, honey, I have to talk to you. And okay, I'm really considering this Bouvet thing. Hey, what do you mean? Well, listen, I'm still young. Office is fine, work is stable. I think it's the perfect timing. And this is only going to be a once in a lifetime trip. And she gave me the look and she said, well, okay. So after maybe a week after that, I text Kenny back and I said, hey, Ken, I'm in. Let's go through the paperwork and stuff. And he said, great, go in. And we started, doing the documentation, getting all the stuff ready. And that's it. So I'm officially the third doctor of the team. I'm a dentist. So Adrian, Kilo 08 SCA, he jokes that there's never been a DXpedition like this with a dentist. So he's always, giving me a hard time about that. But yeah, so okay, let's prep to it. I had to get my, all the equipment. I'm not a team leader, and I get an email or two a day. So I don't even want to know what, being a team leader in one of these things is like. So we got a prep. I went to Norway. I did some Arctic training in Svalbard back in April. And on the way back to Norway, I left my equipment there and actually just got put into the container that's being shipped this week to Falkland Islands. So that's it, man. He invited me over and then a couple of the teammates, and we started working ever since. So we're really looking forward to this.
So you were able to convince the wife. The business is such that you can just reschedule all your patients for when you come back. How long do you think you're going to be gone?
Well, I'm scheduling myself for 2 months. We're leaving probably at some early in January. So I had some colleagues that I'm really thankful for them that they're going to be covering me for a couple of days, whatever they can volunteer to work. And then I have patients back here in March 1st. So I really have to be here before March 1st. But that's the longest I'm ever going to be away from my wife and kids.
How are you going to communicate with them while you're gone?
We're going to use through our pilot station. We're going to have satellite phones and there's going to be some internet connection. I don't know. I really don't know the details, but most likely it'll be like that.
You'll have the ability to send email back and forth.
Yeah, but that's because we have very limited bandwidth back then. And it's all like weather related. If it's bad weather day, we really can't upload our logs or do any of that stuff. So, but most of it's going to be through our pilot station. We're going to have a couple of them scattered around, but the lead station. So all the, personal information is going to go through that. And I said, of course, if it's something like really important that you really have to tell me, then of course, send a message. If it's something like that the kid don't want to eat their food, I don't really need to know about that. So, so they, it's part of the prepping and prepping the family, prepping myself. in every aspect, physically, mentally, spiritually, just to get ready to get on my wildest and most adventurous trip in my life.
What are you doing physically? What kind of workouts are you doing in order to prepare yourself physically?
When the news came up, so I talked to him. I've been working out. I have a personal trainer, so I told him, "Hey, listen, I got this thing coming up," and I explained to him what it was, and he started, doing the routine specifically to do that. One of the things that he said, you have to develop some endurance. So what I do is once a week, I go out on some hiking trails. I started, I don't know, a mile, maybe 2 miles when I started back in January. Now we're doing like 6-7 miles of walking, going up mountains and stuff. And then the last thing that I was doing is I have a vest with weights. So I'm trying to, be able to carry more weights as I do that. It's really hard to prepare for the cold here because, we're in the tropics. So it's like, 100 degrees and humid, but it's part of the trip.
Maybe a walk-in refrigerator at a restaurant.
Yeah, maybe that'll work. No, but what I've been doing, I've been taking cold showers since January, and that helps because even though maybe the temperature here in I don't know, probably get to like 60 degrees maybe, but when I was in the States or when I was in Svalbard and in Europe, it gets like 40 degrees and the cold water on the shower.
Oh, it does. 40 degrees centigrade or 40 degrees Fahrenheit?
40 Fahrenheit. Centigrade, I don't know.
No, that would be pretty hot, but no, I also do cold showers, but during the summer in Israel, the water coming out of the tap, the cold water coming out of the tap is still, 80 degrees.
Yeah. Same thing here. But, and then, when we're just finishing up our summer here, so water should start to get cool. And the other thing is when I go training, it's 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, it's already 80 degrees.
Now, are you doing any rock climbing? Because you have the videos that you're looking at of Bouvet is essentially the place you want to be is up some pretty steep.
Yes, so I did some glacier climbing when I was in Svalbard. I'm taking all the members have to take ropes basic course at least. So I got my schedule for October, and so the plan would be, once we get to the island, we're essentially going to land on a beach, and then after that we have our Arctic consultant, which is a gentleman, Peter is his name. So he's got 30 years of experience. If we cannot climb the cliff, we're going to climb the glacier and then set up infrastructure on top of the cliff, like a pulley system or like a levee, so that with that we'll be able to, with ropes and stuff, to bring all the gear up to the mountain. So it's about a 8 to 10 meter cliff that we have to climb. And it's something that, because we're going to be, when they were planning the whole stage, they were thinking, okay, so how can we do a boat landing on Bouvet? The previous attempt was with the helicopter. So they went and communicated with the Norwegian Polar Institute. They met with people that have been to the island many times doing research, people that have sailed those waters, and they all agreed that it was on Cap Phi, which is on the southern tip, southeast part of the island. So, and we saw a video recently. There was in 2012 a father and son team, and they landed on the exact same beach that we're gonna land. And what they did was they climbed up the glacier. They put a time capsule on Bouvet itself. I don't think we're gonna go look for it, but it's there for sure. But the whole idea, was that it can be done. We'll get there. We'll wait for the weather windows. And once the weather windows are there, we have our Zodiac staging prepared. So if we're able to get at least one boat across and the weather deteriorates, those guys will be able to sustain themselves. I think if we get up to boat number 3, that's enough for to have one radio station in the air. And it'll probably take a day or two, maybe if weather cooperates. I think it's a total of 15 to 20 Zodiac, passes. And we're going to be using 2 Zodiacs at the same time to speed it up. So hopefully we could get our stuff in the island, and we should be in the island 3 weeks, maybe 21 to 28 days, maybe, depending on what. If weather's nice, we could stay longer, but it's all, the captain of the boat. If he says we got to go, we got to go. Safety is the main concern here.
Is there a mooring for the boat? Will the boat be moored off the island, or does the boat have to kind of go away and maintain some distance?
Anchored out, no moorings there. So it's going to be anchored out while we do the Zodiac thing. And then after that, depending on, they could move around, go a little bit outside, come in, because, he has to take care of his ship. The good thing here is that the captain of the ship is the owner. So he's not going to run into a storm. I mean, if we got weather maps and things like that, and he's going to try to make that route so that we go through the smoothest part as possible. Of course, it's Southern Ocean, so it's really, really unpredictable. But once we get to the island, they have to be there offshore. We do our exchanges with them every couple of days if we can, get some more water, take out the trash, take out all the other stuff. And then once we're ready to turn off, then do the same thing, but on the way back.
We will return to our guests in just a moment. Nuts and Bolts Magazine is a new sponsor and is an amazing resource for new and old hams alike. Click on the banner to get your online or paper subscription of Nuts and Bolts. A new way to show your support of the QSO Today podcast is to buy me a coffee. I consume gallons of coffee to create this weekly podcast. Invite me for coffee by pushing the yellow button, Buy Me a Coffee, on the QSO Today show notes page. And now back to our QSO Today. Okay, can I ask a question that no one's going to ask you?
Yes.
Do you have life insurance for this trip?
Yes.
Would a life insurance company cover you on a trip like this?
No, what we're required to take is the Medevac insurance. So that's, we probably get that maybe sometime in December before the trip. And that's coming out of South Africa. So if we have any problems, the area is the South African Navy or Coast Guard. They're the ones that are going to be coming over. The fastest they could get there is 5 days.
You have Medevac insurance, meaning that the South African Navy will send a helicopter or probably a ship and a helicopter to kind of winch you off the island and hopefully save your life.
Yes, that is, yes. So they're the ones that will cover the areas. If there's whatever boats around, call or whatever. But I have life insurance. I really hope everybody does. I checked with my carrier before going, and I got an email to prove it. And he said, it's fine, you're covered. So I really have no intention to use that.
No. I guess the reason I'm asking the question is because obviously you're a middle-aged guy with a profession and a business and children and a wife at home. And this is probably one of the most serious assaults on a DXpedition location of any of the places that essentially that hams go. And there's a lot at stake. I'm not trying to make it bigger than it is, but, there's all of these factors that kind of go into, making this decision. And obviously this decision was not made just by you, it was made by you and your family.
Yep.
I think it's amazing. Probably if I had the same opportunity, my wife would say, oh, just go. But I'd be asking these questions too.
Yeah, I know. And everything's taken care of home. I even have some of the staff that are going to take care of bills and just stuff. Life will continue while I'm away, except that you can't talk to me. But after that, the family here is going to be following us on Facebook, and we're going to post stuff whenever we get a chance about how things are going. There's some satellite tracking that you can do to the ship as well, so you can know where it is. So we'll have some of the communication like that. But I think the biggest challenge would be the day we set up camp and the day we disembark. After that, it's just to hang out and then and also the going into the seasickness part of the adventure.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. We have our 2 doctors who are ready, and the medication list is incredible. The equipment, the hydration, the IV fluids, all that stuff. It's just, they've really thought about, probably every potential problem and have some kind of mitigation that way.
I think that's pretty amazing. Are you doing some sailing so that you at least have some sea legs and familiarity with being out at sea?
Yeah, I have I say my seawater sailing coach. I had a good dentist friend of mine. He's a sailor. And we've been trying to get on ships and boats and just to have a feeling of how it feels like. But unfortunately, the only way to really know it's if I can get a ship here and go out 3 days out to sea and then come back. But nobody does that here. I mean, people just go island hopping. But that's just like a few hours, so that's not really what we're going to go through. But it's an experience, and there's medication for that. There's food for that, and been talking with friends, and we even had the doctors recommended before we go that we try the seasickness meds to see how we cope with it. So that's something that we're going to be doing as well. And it's just waiting it out. We have medication to help us sleep for the journey. Everything that could potentially go wrong, and even for hydration, there's a couple of ways that they could hydrate us if we, if our stomach is not doing well and all that. So So hopefully we don't get to use that, but we'll be ready in case we have to. And Dr. Bill is like, yeah, you have to use special equipment. I'm going to use it for you guys.
Now, the ship that you're on is the Marama?
Yes, it's Marama. It's a sailboat.
It's a sailboat. Is the idea that's why you're leaving from the Falkland Islands is that you're going to take the winds mostly?
Yes, the thing with the Marama is an Antarctic expedition ship. What it does is that during the season, which is from like November to March, they do trips from Argentina down to the Antarctic Peninsula for tourism, for research, stuff like that. So this boat is equipped for that kind of weather. It's aluminum body. It's got heating. It's got the water maker. It's got, six rooms. It's kind of sizable. So the idea with the sailboat is I can get really close to there. So as the winds and the ocean currents in the southern oceans, they always go from west to east. So the idea would be, go from Falkland Islands, and then it should be about a 7 to 10-day trip going to Bouvet. And then after that, it's going to be maybe a week trip to go up to Cape Town, which is our final destination.
Does that make the trip cheaper in terms of the overall cost? I think the ships that were used for earlier assaults on Bouvet were diesel ships.
Yes, well, the ship, the 3Y0 Zulu team, 4 years ago, they went out of Chile, and then the plan was for them to return to Chile, but they're going to use diesel the whole time. So for us, our diesel, and the other thing that we have is we plan to use diesel as least as possible because that's the fuel that we're going to use in the island. So whatever we if we eat up the diesel on the way there, that's less operating time that we'll have on the island. So we'll try to use the sail as much, and then after that, we'll have to sail our way back to Cape Town.
Right, and with a sailboat, if you run out of diesel fuel, the boat can still propel.
Yes, it can still move. It might not be easy when you get to the to the ports and all that, but it has a motor, and the good thing about the ship is that they normally during the summertime it will go and do the Northwest Passage. So this year they skipped that. It's been in Brazil in the shipyard since April, being refurbished, being tested, being prepared for. So we had our Arctic consultant. He spent 4 days there in April, looking at the ship, measuring the ship, telling us how much stuff we can carry, going through a list of item by nuts and bolts to make sure everything's in top shape. And he's the one that found the ship for us. So he'll be he's making sure that everything is going according to plan, and he's going to be with us on the trip. So we're always going to have a professional by our side, leading the way. And
that really sounds great. So Otis, what are you going to operate? What's your specialty when the camp is set up and you're on top of the mountain and it's time to operate?
I could do any mode. Phone, I like CW, and we're going to be doing some FT8 as well. The way that we're going to set up is that we want to be, and our goal is to make 200,000 QSOs. So that's, if we get to that, that's going to be the biggest expedition in terms of QSO numbers. We plan to use, we can have up to 4 FT8 stations on the air, and we're going to have 8 regular, CW phone stations on the air. So our maximum will be 12 operating positions. The way they have it set up is that one operator can operate the 4 FT8 signals, or you can have, let's say you're doing 20 meter CW, on your same screen, you can run 20 meter FT8. So all the operators are going to be running at least 2 signals at a time. And the way it's been set up, they've been practicing. They set up in Oslo a couple times, in Norway, the interference, the bandpass filters, the amplifiers, all the other equipment and hardware. So all the antennas have been tested. Everything has been tested. So we want to make sure, and even the antennas, some of them we had them kind of custom reinforced for the winds and all that. So the shelters, where we're going to be living in, the 3 main tents. One is going to be the operating position. The other one is the social, where we're going to be eating, hanging out, that kind of stuff. And then the other one is the sleeping quarters. So 2 of them will have heating, systems in there. So we'll be living in there for at least 3 weeks. No shower. So we're going to do our, little water and cloth and cleaning and hygiene and all that stuff. And then once we get back to the ship, the ship has all the amenities. So we actually have one of the crew is a cook, so we'll have meals from the ship on our way there and our way back. And occasionally, if we can get a real meal whenever there's good weather, then we really appreciate it. Otherwise, it's all MRE, so meals ready to eat kind of thing. So preparation, water we get from the ship, and then we'll get some rainwater that we're going to use for our toilets and stuff like that.
When you leave Puerto Rico and you're headed to Argentina, to the Falkland Islands, what are you taking with you? What are you carrying?
I'm carrying my clothing for the boat. So my clothing for the Bouvet is already in the container, so I'll get that on the boat. Aside from that, taking stuff, but I'm sure I'm going to bring some Puerto Rican rum maybe along with it.
Is that Bacardi rum?
Don Q. Bacardi is the stuff you get everywhere, but you don't get Don Q.
Oh, Don Q. Okay.
So I might take some of that. I don't know yet.
Are they encouraging like laptop computers, cell phones?
All the laptops are already in the container. So the only thing you need to take is your cell phone, let's say your camera, and your clothing and your stuff for the boat trip. Because all the stuff that we had for our own personal clothing, it's already packed. Everybody brought their luggage in April, and it's been loaded into the container, so it's going to be in the boat in Falklands by the time we get there.
You're not going to even check luggage. You're going to carry what you can carry in your backpack.
Yeah, carry my backpack. I'll have a check luggage with the rest of the cost. So I'll have my Bouvet bag, my regular bag, and maybe a backpack. That's it.
Well, this is very exciting. And what can I say? I think any of us that are listening to this interview, well, maybe not all of us, but I think a lot of us are envious that you're going, and we're going to follow it and see how it all turns out. And hopefully, it sounds to me like you guys have it all together. You've thought about it. If the weather conditions permit, you'll make the assault and you'll be successsul.
Absolutely. We're really looking forward to it, and I have to commend, the Norwegian guys that they've planned and they've been so meticulous about the whole thing, and they've been working on this for 2 or 3 years now. But the hard work just ended last night on Sunday night, because that's when they finally filled up the container. So we just can't wait to get to the ship, and once you're in the boat, it's like whatever it's done, and we just go do our thing, and then make sure we come back safe and tell the stories after that. And what's really going to be cool, Eric, when I'm operating there and I hear the 4 Zulu 1 GU, you hear your call sign on the air.
UG, yeah, 4 Zulu 1 UG. Yeah, I'm going to have to get my FT8 station going here.
That's right. Make sure it's ready, and make sure your antenna's pointing to us in case your rotor breaks, so you don't have to go up there and move manually. And then, when I hear that, I'm going to say, hey, Eric, good to hear you. Life's great here in the cold South. You're 5'9". That's going to be pretty cool.
It'll be summer there on Bouvet Island, and it'll be winter here.
Yeah, it'll be winter there. It'll be, I think it's about 0 degrees Celsius around, maybe it gets up a little bit, and then...
and the summer on Bouvet.
Yep. So that's pretty much what we're expecting to. So it's not really all that cold if you compare it to, Svalbard or maybe some other places up in Northern Europe during the winter. But it should be manageable, I guess. For the Norwegian guys, they're born in snow, so these guys are like really cold tolerant, I guess.
Norwegians, they do sauna and then they jump into a frozen lake after the sauna, right? So they're used to extremes.
Yeah, we're not gonna have a sauna in Bouvet, but we'll have the cold. We've been working really, really hard. Our operation, the total cost is about close to $700,000 US.
Yeah.
A big endeavor, and we need everybody's help, because this is something that's not just us. We're all doing it together.
Have you raised most of the money?
We're about 90% done by now, so hopefully we should be in good shape by the time we leave. We have so many sponsors, from the States, from Italy, from everywhere, and especially the clubs and also the individuals that donate to our cause. So we're really looking forward to putting a great show for the hand community, and we're really looking forward to going there and to especially to come back and tell the stories from the number 2 most wanted DXCC entity in the world. So
number 1 is North Korea.
Yeah, but the thing with North Korea is you can fly there. The problem with North Korea is getting the permit to operate.
Right. It's the people that's the problem, not the ice.
The permit. Here, getting the permit, it's Norwegian government, so that's that was easy. But getting there and the logistics, it's the nightmare. So that's where all the efforts have been there, and that's why it's such a big endeavor. Everything here, it's been planned, color coded. We should have, we're gonna build the antennas. A goes with A, B goes with B. Everything is planned and color coded, so we should go there, do our thing, come back.
It seems to me that you guys also should have a geocache that you put there, and maybe you can get money from the geocache community. Put some tokens in there.
Yeah, well, we did try, and I don't know if maybe you can help us there with this podcast. We sent communication last year to Starlink, because if we were able to get Starlink in Bouvet, of course, communication with the outside world would be much easier. We might have like live feed cams and real-time logging, but also we can prove that the Starlink system works if we're able to, because this is the remotest island in the world. If Starlink goes there and you can get pretty decent internet, you could get internet anywhere in the world.
I would think that as you're closer to the poles, I think that the Starlink, isn't it going over the poles? You have the highest density of satellites at the poles, at the top and the bottom. So I would think that if Starlink is working in the northern hemisphere, near the North Pole and the northern states of Canada, that it should also work, in a place like Bouvet.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they have, for us to get signal, they have set up some gateways on some places on Earth. So as long as a satellite is within 500 miles of that gateway, it works.
It would have to have gateways in Argentina.
They have some in Cape Town. So when we're 500 miles away, it will work. But the problem is that you need to relay the information satellite to satellite to satellite and then to the gateway. And they're not there yet.
How about like McMurdo Station on the South Pole? Aren't those served by fiber optic?
I have no idea. There was fiber optic in Svalbard, so I'm sure there's really high-tech communications down there. But if we can get, there's Iridium satellites, they'll work fine. So we'll have our satellite phone hooked up to that.
Are you going to take a Starlink Earth station just in case?
No. If they say, yes, we'll have it, and we're always following up with them. One of the team members has been the one in charge of this thing. And if they say, hey, we can make it happen, sure, we'll take one, I guess. That shouldn't be a problem. But I don't know if anybody that's listening to the podcast here knows Elon personally, maybe call him up and tell him Bouvet.
Hopefully there might be somebody that has some influence. That would be really great. Let me ask a question. What excites you the most about what is happening in ham radio right now?
Oh, man, I think this is the best time in ham radio. I always hear people say that, this is, we used to be better. And no. This is, you have access to technology. You have access to some really cool ways to communicate, and the technology and it's just we've never had this part of in our lifetime. Look at the radios nowadays. You could all technology. It's all SDRs. I could connect to my phone to my home station from my cell phone. Think about that. That's the world is getting smaller by the minute. You can communicate with more people, and I think it's the greatest hobby in the world. And I tell you, Eric, if there is another hobby that's much better, I don't want to know about it, because I think this is a lifestyle essentially. Not just a hobby for me. It's more like a lifestyle, and the friendship that you make and the people that you get to meet, and it's inspirational and it's really cool. So I invite people. If you're gonna do ham radio, do it, enjoy it, and more than that, just live it and make it part of your life.
I'm in 100% agreement that we're in the golden age of ham radio, and there isn't anything like it.
So we're very lucky to be living in this one. So absolutely. If people are thinking, and let's say you have no interest in DXing, what I would recommend, at least for March, next year for January, work Bouvet, because this is going to be the only time in your life that you're going to be able to do it.
I think that's great advice to give. And with that, Otis, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. I learned so much about Hurricane Maria and about the Bouvet Island DXpedition coming up in January.
Thank you very much, Eric. And I know I'm going to be seeing you this weekend in the Ham Expo.
Thank you so much for joining me, Otis. 73. That concludes this episode of QSO Today. I hope that you enjoyed this QSO with Otis. Please be sure to check out the show notes that include links and information about the topics that we discussed. Go to www.qsotoday.com and put an NP4G in the search box at the top of the page. My thanks to ICOM America for its support of the QSO Today podcast. Please show your support of ICOM America by clicking on their banner in the show notes pages. You may notice that some of the episodes are transcribed into written text. If you'd like to sponsor this or any other episode into written text, please contact me. Support the QSO Today podcast by first joining the QSO Today email list by pressing the subscribe buttons on the show notes pages. I will not spam you or share your email address with anyone. Become a listener sponsor monthly or annually by clicking on the sponsor buttons on the show notes pages, or use my Amazon link before shopping at Amazon. Amazon gives me a small commission on your purchases while at the same time protecting your privacy. I'm grateful for any way that you show appreciation and support. It makes a big difference as I head towards episode 400. QSO Today is now available in the iHeart Radio, Spotify, YouTube, and a bunch of other online audio services, including the iTunes Store. Look on the right side of the show notes pages for a listing of these services. You can use the Amazon Echo and say, "Alicia, play the QSO Today podcast from TuneIn." My thanks to Ben Bresky, who edits every single show and allows both this host and my guest to sound brilliant. Thanks, Ben. Until next time, this is Eric, 4Z1UG, 73. The QSO Today podcast is a product of KEG Media Inc., who is solely responsible for its content.